The bells and walls when 5-year-old Grace woke up screaming at 2:30 a.m., clawing at her nightgown and sobbing, "The bells won't stop ringing. The walls are falling down. I can't get out." Her mother Anna thought it was just another nightmare. But when Grace looked at her with eyes filled with adult terror and whispered, "Mama, I burned up in the church with all the other children. The teacher couldn't save us," Anna felt her world tilt on its axis in a way that had nothing to do with being jolted awake in the middle of the night. Grace had never been inside a burning building. Their small town in Vermont had one modest church that had stood peacefully for over a century, and Grace attended Sunday school there every week without incident. Yet here was her 5-year-old daughter describing the sensation of being trapped in flames with the vivid detail of someone who had lived through it. "The bells kept ringing and ringing," Grace continued, her small body shaking with remembered terror. "They were supposed to call for help, but nobody came fast enough. The wooden walls started cracking, and pieces of the ceiling fell down on us." Anna pulled Grace into her arms, feeling her daughter's heart racing against her chest. "Sweetheart, it was just a bad dream. You're safe here with me." But Grace pulled back, her young face creased with the kind of sorrow that seemed impossible. "For someone so small, it wasn't a dream, Mama. I was there. I was one of the children in the schoolroom when the fire started. My name was Mary Catherine, and I was 8 years old." The specificity of the name, the matter-of-fact way Grace spoke about being someone else, made Anna's skin crawl. This wasn't the confused rambling of a child waking from a nightmare. Grace was speaking with the clear recollection of someone, recounting actual memories. "Tell me about Mary Catherine," Anna said carefully, though part of her didn't want to hear the answer. Grace's eyes took on a distant quality, as if she was looking back across time. "I lived with my mama and papa in a little house near the church. Papa worked at the mill, and Mama took in sewing. I loved going to school because our teacher, Miss Elizabeth, was so kind and taught us beautiful songs." She paused, her small hands twisting the fabric of her nightgown. "But then the fire started. I don't know how. 1 minute we were practicing our letters, and the next minute there was smoke coming under the door." Anna felt her throat tighten. "What happened next, sweetheart?" "Miss Elizabeth tried to get us all out, but the door was stuck. The smoke was getting thicker, and some of the little ones started crying." Grace's voice grew smaller, more frightened. "That's when the bells started ringing, the church bells, calling for help. But they sounded different, scary, like they were crying too." The detail about the bells made Anna's blood run cold. Grace had always been sensitive to sounds, but she'd never shown any particular fear of church bells. In fact, she usually delighted in hearing them ring on Sunday mornings. "The walls started making cracking sounds," Grace continued, her young voice heavy with trauma that belonged to another lifetime. "Miss Elizabeth was trying to break the window with a chair, but it was too high up. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see her anymore, but I could hear her coughing." Tears began streaming down Grace's cheeks. "I called for my mama, but she couldn't hear me over the bells and the fire. The last thing I remember was the ceiling falling down, and then everything went quiet and peaceful." Anna held her daughter tighter, her own tears falling freely. Whether this was memory or imagination, the emotion behind it was devastatingly real. Grace was carrying the weight of another child's terror and loss, and it was breaking both their hearts. "What happened after everything went quiet?" Anna asked gently. Grace's expression shifted, becoming almost serene. "I wasn't scared anymore. I was floating above the church, and I could see the fire trucks coming, but they were too late. I could see my mama and papa crying in the crowd, and I wanted to tell them I was okay, but I couldn't." She looked up at Anna with eyes that seemed far too wise for her age. "That's when I understood that I had to go to the light place. But someday I could come back and be someone else's little girl, someone who would love me just as much as Mama and Papa did. Over the following days, Grace's memories of the church fire became more detailed and more disturbing. She would draw pictures of a wooden church with a tall steeple, describing architectural details that seemed far beyond her 5-year-old knowledge. She spoke about specific children who had been in the schoolroom with her, giving their names, and describing their personalities with the familiarity of a classmate. But it was her description of the bells that haunted Anna most. Grace would cover her ears whenever they passed the local church during bell-ringing times, saying they sounded too much like the crying bells from when I died. Anna found herself researching historical church fires, searching for any incident that matched Grace's descriptions. What she discovered made her hands shake as she read through old newspaper archives and historical records. In 1887, a wooden church in rural Pennsylvania had burned during a school session, trapping 15 children and their teacher inside. The fire had started in the basement and spread rapidly through the building's wooden structure. The church bells had indeed rung continuously during the fire, not as a call for help, but because the heat had warped the bell tower mechanism, causing them to ring uncontrollably until the tower collapsed. Among the victims was an 8-year-old girl named Mary Catherine O'Brien, daughter of mill worker Patrick O'Brien and seamstress Margaret O'Brien. The newspaper account described how the children had been trapped when the schoolroom door became warped by heat, and how their teacher, Elizabeth Morrison, had died trying to break the windows to create an escape route. The details matched Grace's account with terrifying accuracy, down to the ages of the children, the teacher's name, and the specific way the fire had spread through the building. Anna stared at the computer screen, her rational mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Could her 5-year-old daughter really be carrying the memories of a child who had died over a century ago? Or was this some elaborate coincidence, some trick of imagination that had somehow aligned with historical fact? But when she showed Grace a photograph of the original church from a historical society website, her daughter's reaction eliminated any doubt. "That's it," Grace exclaimed, pointing at the image with excitement and terror intermingled. "That's the church where I died. See the tall bell tower? That's where the crying bells were." She traced the outline of the building with her small finger. "And there's the window Miss Elizabeth was trying to break. It was too high up, and the glass was too thick." Anna felt the room spinning around her. The photograph was from 1885, 2 years before the fire. There was no way Grace could have seen it before. No way she could have known these details. "Grace, do you remember anything else about Mary Catherine's life before the fire?" Grace nodded seriously. "I remember lots of things. I remember helping Mama with the sewing, and how Papa would sing Irish songs when he came home from work. I remember my little brother Tommy, who was too young for school yet." She paused, her expression growing sad. "I remember being excited about learning to read better, and how Miss Elizabeth said I was one of her best students. I was going to help her teach the younger children when I got older." The dreams that had been cut short by tragedy seemed to weigh heavily on Grace's small shoulders. Anna realized that her daughter wasn't just carrying memories of death. She was carrying the unfulfilled hopes and dreams of a child whose life had ended far too soon. "Is that why you came back?" Anna asked. "To finish what Mary Catherine couldn't?" Grace considered the question with the seriousness of the philosopher. "Maybe. I think souls come back to learn things they didn't get to learn before. Mary Catherine never got to grow up, never got to help other children learn, never got to have her own family." She looked at Anna with infinite love. "But also, I think I came back because Mary Catherine's Mama and Papa were so sad when she died. Their love was so strong that it called to me across all the years, asking for another chance to love a little girl." The insight was so profound, so emotionally mature, that Anna had to take a moment to compose herself. Her 5-year-old daughter was speaking about love and loss with the wisdom of someone who had experienced both across multiple lifetimes. As weeks passed, Anna noticed that Grace's nightmares began to change. Instead of waking up in terror, she would wake up peaceful, sometimes even smiling. "I dreamed about Mary Catherine's mama and papa again," Grace told her one morning. But this time, they weren't sad. They were happy because they could see that Mary Catherine's spirit found a new family to love her. She climbed into Anna's lap, snuggling close. "They wanted me to tell you, thank you for taking such good care of their little girl's soul." Anna felt tears burning her eyes. "Do you still remember being Mary Catherine?" "Yes, but it doesn't hurt as much now. I think Mary Catherine is at peace because she knows her story isn't forgotten, and because she got to experience the love she missed." Out on the first time, Grace looked up at Anna with eyes that briefly held the depth of someone much older. "Besides, I'm Grace now, and I have my own life to live. But I'll always carry a little bit of Mary Catherine with me, to honor her memory." The church fire dreams gradually faded, replaced by the normal dreams of a happy 5-year-old. But Grace retained an unusual compassion for others, and a deep appreciation for education that seemed to echo Mary Catherine's unfulfilled aspirations. When Grace started kindergarten, she showed a remarkable aptitude for helping younger children and a natural teaching ability that amazed her instructors. She would patiently help classmates with their letters, showing the same gentle encouragement that Miss Elizabeth had once shown her students. "She has an old soul," Grace's teacher told Anna during a parent conference. "There's something about her that makes the other children feel safe and understood. It's quite remarkable for someone so young." Anna smiled, knowing that Grace's gift came from carrying the love and wisdom of a child who had been denied the chance to grow up and share her own gifts with the world. Years later, when Grace was in high school and had long since stopped speaking about Mary Catherine, she chose to write her senior thesis on the history of education in rural America. Her research led her to the story of the 1887 church fire, and when she read about Mary Catherine O'Brien, she felt a familiar stirring in her heart. "I want to visit the site," she told Anna. "I think it's time to say goodbye properly." The church had been rebuilt after the fire, but the original cemetery remained, with a small memorial to the children and teacher who had died in the tragedy. Grace stood before Mary Catherine's weathered headstone, her teenage hands tracing the carved letters of a name that had once been her own. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind. "Thank you for letting me live the life you couldn't have. I promise I'll make it count." As they walked away from the cemetery, Anna asked, "Do you remember being her?" Grace smiled, her eyes reflecting both the wisdom of experience and the hope of youth. "I remember loving and being loved. I remember the importance of learning and teaching. I remember that life is precious and should never be taken for granted." She paused, looking back at the memorial one last time. "But mostly, I remember that love is stronger than death, and that sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do is carry someone else's dreams forward into the future." The bells of the rebuilt church began to ring, marking the hour with clear, joyful tones. Grace listened without fear, hearing in their music not the crying bells of tragedy, but the celebration of life continuing, love enduring, and dreams finding new ways to flourish across the boundaries of time itself. If Grace's story moves you as deeply as it moves me, please subscribe to our channel. We explore the mysteries of consciousness, the unexplained connections between past and present, and the remarkable ways that love and memory transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these incredible tales that remind us that some bonds are too strong for death to break, and that sometimes the most profound healing comes from honoring the dreams that others were never able to fulfill.